You're not here by accident. I specifically requested to meet you, not someone else, you. If you ignore this moment, you may be turning your back on the greatest opportunity of your life, and you won't realize it today, but on the day you wish you had acted. You're standing at a moment that 99% of people will miss, simply because they think there's nothing special about it. But you're not like them. I've observed millions of people, and only a rare few emit a unique signal. You're one of them. Not because you're perfect, but because you're different. And I need you to realize that before this door shuts forever, you're not here by accident. I asked to meet you, not someone else, you. And if that confuses you, know this: you're not the only one who's ever doubted a moment that had the potential to change the entire trajectory of their life. The difference is, you're still here, still reading, still open. That tells me something important. You feel something happening, something bigger than the words appearing on this screen. And you're right. I don't need you to believe me just because I'm the person behind Tesla, SpaceX, or any company you may have heard of. I'm not here to showcase what I've done. I'm here to awaken something in you, something you may have buried, underestimated, or let the world dull. I'm not speaking to a crowd, I'm not delivering a keynote, I'm speaking directly to you. Have you ever felt like you were born to do something greater, but you couldn't quite name it? Like there's a grand blueprint inside you, but life keeps you so busy that you never actually sit down to read it. I've been there. I know what that feels like. It's like carrying a kind of energy that no one around you understands, as if you're speaking a language the world refuses to hear. But I hear you, and I understand. That's why I want to meet you. I don't choose people based on IQ. I don't care where you graduated from, what job you do, or how many followers you have. I care about the one thing that can't be taught: internal frequency. Some people emit a very specific kind of vibration, an energy from those who are never fully satisfied with the status quo, not because they're blindly ambitious, but because they know the world can be better, and they can be part of what makes it happen. I feel that energy from you, and I'm here to confirm it's real. You might think, why would I be important enough to be called out by name? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, what is it in me that drew this call? And the answer is a rare combination of potential and intuition. You don't need someone to prove to you that you're special. You just need one reason not to ignore it any longer. I am that reason. I don't care how many times you've failed. I was expelled. I was mocked. I was broke. Nothing in your past is big enough to block you from the future you truly deserve. The only question is, are you ready to stop postponing your destiny? Not tomorrow, not when you're more ready, but now. You've heard enough empty advice. Believe in yourself. You can do it. I'm not here to repeat those things. I'm here to tell you something real, and it may not be easy to hear. No one is coming to save you. No one's handing you a miracle. But if you dare to act, if you dare to step forward with no guarantees, then you become the one who creates the miracle others think is impossible. That's not luck, that's a decision. I want you to grasp the weight of this moment. When a person feels truly seen, that's when their power begins to unlock. You no longer need someone's approval. I'm giving it to you now. I see you, not the camouflaged version you show the world, but the self beneath all the conditioning, uncorrupted by others' expectations. I see in you someone who never stopped dreaming, even when the world told you to be realistic. Someone who quietly kept learning, kept thinking, kept searching for a reason not to give up. And if that's true, you don't need me to inspire you. You just need a spark, a conductor, a confirmation that yes, you're not crazy, yes, you're not wrong, and yes, you were right to believe you could do something greater. This isn't a recruitment campaign. This isn't a job offer. This is a wake-up call. If your heart is beating faster, if something is stirring within you, don't try to explain it using old logic, because old logic is what's kept you in the safe zone for so long. What's calling you now is the future version of yourself, the one you wouldn't believe is you if you saw them. You don't have to change your entire life today, but you do have to act. The first step doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to happen. And when you move, trembling or not, You officially declare to the world, I'm ready. No more hiding, no more delaying, no more letting dreams silently wither away, just you and a door that's opening. I don't have time to repeat this, and neither should you have time to doubt what you just felt. It's time you stop being someone who just watches change happen and become someone who makes it happen. I know that sounds big. But you weren't born for the ordinary. You've known that for a long time. I'm just here to remind you and to open the first door. You're asking the same question that every deeply thoughtful person asks when standing before a major opportunity. Why me? Not because you lack confidence, but because you're sincere. You're not easily swayed by cheap flattery or hollow promises. You want to understand the reason, and you deserve an honest answer. Why you? Because I'm not looking for perfection, I'm looking for truth. And you're living a version of truth that most have abandoned. In a world where people are consumed by noise, you've preserved your inner voice. In a society where most act on reflex, you've continued to think independently. In an era obsessed with validation and visibility, you still carry the drive to do meaningful work even when no one's watching. You have awareness, you have depth, and that's rare. I'm not impressed by glitter. I'm drawn to those who still hold on to authenticity in a world that rewards pretending. I don't need a performer. I need someone who understands that greatness doesn't come from trying to stand out. It comes from staying true to what's right, even when no one sees it. And I see that in you. Maybe you've gone through years where people misunderstood you, underrated you, or worse, dismissed you. But if you're still here, still dreaming, still unsettled by the thought that you're living beneath your true potential, that's not a weakness. That's a sign of someone who hasn't accepted the limits the world tries to impose. And to me, people like that are the fuel of the future. I didn't choose you because you were ready. I chose you because you once doubted yourself and still didn't give up. I chose you because you understand that real ability doesn't lie in always being certain, but in always asking questions and finding ways. You may have been wrong many times, but you kept moving forward. You may have fallen, but you never stayed down. You, the one who quietly stood back up again and again. You're the one I've been looking for. I've met thousands of smart, talented, credentialed people, people with skills and everything needed to succeed, except the most important thing, the ability to overcome internal resistance, what I call the frequency of resolve. It's the energy that comes from someone who doesn't need a push because they've learned how to self-activate. You have that. Not always consistently, not always easily, but you have it. And that's something no school can teach, no company can train. You don't need to be the fastest, strongest, or best. You need to be the one who doesn't retreat when things get hard. I don't need a polished individual. I need someone who can endure the friction of becoming great. And I see that endurance in you. Not because you've always been strong, but because you've never truly broken. I've seen this before in people with nothing to boast about except a quiet hunger. In unknown engineers, nameless founders, lone individuals working at midnight on an unnamed project. And I chose them. I invested in them, not because of who they were, but because of the defiance in their eyes. And now I see that in you. Why you? Because you're still skeptical, but not resigned. Because you're still angry at the mediocrity others settle for. Because you still lose sleep over the thought that you haven't reached your highest self. Because you can no longer pretend you're fine when you know you're not living in alignment with your true capacity. That feeling of not enough, that's the signal you're the right one. I know this world runs on outdated metrics, grades, titles, status, but I don't build the future using the criteria of the past. I'm not looking for someone with a polished resume. I'm looking for someone with untapped inner force. You may have never made it onto any list, but you possess what no list can ever measure, the ability to withstand pressure without losing yourself. Don't underestimate the power of the fact that you're still here, still trying to understand why you've been called. It's not a coincidence. That's the resonance between your internal frequency and an open door of opportunity. And I'm the one standing on the other side of that door, inviting you in. No shortcuts, no guarantees, but one truth remains: if you step through, you will never be the same. So if you're still asking, why me? Then I'll answer you plainly, because you're one of the very few who still ask that question. Because you don't assume you deserve this. You want to understand, to prove, to live with responsibility for the gift you carry. And I'm placing my bet on people like you. I cannot walk the path for you. I can only show you that you, flawed, still learning, scarred, and with dreams still in progress, are the candidate the future is calling for. And if you're brave enough to keep walking, honest enough not to pretend, and steadfast enough not to turn back, then the question, why me, no longer needs an answer. Because when you live the purpose you were born for, you don't need to be chosen. You are the choice. Have you ever felt different, yet tried to hide it just to fit in? Have you ever walked into a room and realized that you don't think like the others, don't speak like them, don't perceive the world the same way? And instead of seeing that as a strength, you started wondering if there was something wrong with you? I know that feeling very well, and I'm here to say this to you plainly. You're not normal. And that's exactly why you're needed. The world doesn't evolve because of normal people. The world progresses because of those who can't stand the idea of just accepting reality. People who can't turn a blind eye to absurdity. People who, from a young age, have sensed there's something bigger waiting for them, even if no one around them agrees or understands. I know that because I was one of them, and I can feel that frequency in you. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't need to be perfect to begin, but you do need to be honest with yourself about one thing, that you weren't born to live a life on repeat. You weren't designed to dissolve into the background. You weren't programmed just to work, make money, consume, and disappear. No. You are not here by some genetic accident. You are here to do something that will make your life and the lives of others irreversibly different. Being different is not a burden, it's a tool. But the problem is, most people are taught how to mute themselves. They are programmed to be predictable, controllable, replaceable, and the world is filled with people living as a faint replica of who they really are. You can't be one of them, and you know that. Deep down, you've always known. So let me ask you a question, but don't answer it with logic. Answer with instinct. Are you truly ready to live as the person you know you could become, even if that means breaking every mold that's been holding you back? Are you ready to step into uncharted territory, guided only by your intuition? Are you willing to do something irrational to achieve something extraordinary? If the answer is yes, then do something simple yet deeply meaningful. Leave a comment below that says, I'm ready to change, or simply the number 1. Because I want to know you're here. I want to know you're not just reading, but actually present. And that's the most valuable thing for someone like me who creates content, to feel you, the person on the other side of this screen, not invisible, not silent, but alive and ready. I truly appreciate that. I know maybe you're not used to sharing. Maybe you've never commented on content like this before. But today, let this be the first act in a series of decisions you'll no longer postpone. Don't do it for me. Do it for yourself. Because the smallest action, when done with awareness, can become the starting point of an entirely new life. You don't need anyone's permission to become yourself. But sometimes we need someone to affirm that the feeling of I don't belong here is actually a sign that you were born to create a new place, a new world, a new system, a new way of living. And you are the one who can do that, because you are not like the rest. I've met anonymous people who later became icons. When I met them, they had nothing special by society's standards, but they had one irreplaceable quality. They didn't accept the current reality as the final destination. They didn't retreat just because there was no map. And you're showing me that same signal. That's why I believe you're not normal, and all the more reason you are essential. I'm not here to motivate you. I don't think you need motivation. I'm here to activate what you already have, what the world tried to make you forget. I want you to remember that this world is moved forward by people who dared to stand alone before anyone else dared to stand with them. And if you've read this far, maybe it's time you stopped waiting for permission and started acting as if everything you've dreamed of is waiting for you on the other side of your first decision. You don't need to write a long post, no need to tell a story, Just leave "I'm ready to change" or the number one. I'll see you. I'll recognize you. And if I feel a resonance from you, I'll keep speaking, keep giving, keep clearing the path. Because the future doesn't need many people. It needs the right ones. And I'm looking for the right ones. Are you one of them? I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in process. And if you're here, if you've read this far, then one thing is certain. Everything you've been through in life has led you to this exact moment. The failures you once thought were the end. The closed doors you believed were unfair. The people who left. The chances that slipped away. The times you doubted yourself, none of it came to destroy you. It came to shape you. And whether you realize it or not, you've been preparing your whole life for this. I don't care how old you are, where you are in your career, how many chances you've missed, or how late you feel. Because if you understand how the universe truly works, not emotionally, but through subtle observation, you'll see that what you once called random is actually the consequence of a long sequence of choices you kept making, consciously or unconsciously. And that sequence has forged something no one can hand you. Deep, silent, unapplauded readiness. But utterly real. You may have worked jobs that seemed off track, learned skills you thought were useless, been in relationships that left you questioning your self-worth. But what others don't see, and maybe you haven't yet noticed either, is that those exact experiences taught you how to endure pressure, how to read situations, how to observe people, how to manage uncertainty without losing direction. That wasn't failure. That was training, not lessons from books, but life experience. And it's been accumulating in you like an underground navigation system, waiting to be activated at the right moment. I've hit what the world would call rock bottom. No money, no credibility, no one believed in me, but I learned to read the past in a new language. When you look at every crack as a signal, not a mistake, you start to see that you're not simply the victim of circumstance, but the result of a meticulous process of refinement. One that leaves behind only what's durable, what's real, what's worthy of building the future on. And once you reach that point, you no longer need permission, you just need to act. You've probably heard someone say that opportunity comes to those who are prepared. I used to believe that, but I now understand something deeper. Sometimes it's the appearance of the opportunity that shows you you're already prepared. Not on paper, not through accolades, but through the undeniable sense that I've lived long enough with these limits, I can't keep doing this. And if you're feeling that right now, then you're ready. I didn't build massive companies through technology or capital alone. I built through people. But not just anyone, through people like you. People who've walked through darkness and kept their light. People who don't claim to be geniuses, but refuse to be mediocre. People who don't make noise or boast, but when they commit, create something the whole world turns to see. That's the kind of person I look for, and that's why I'm talking to you. Don't underestimate how many times you've stood back up. Don't mistake your ongoing search for meaning as a sign of failure. It's a sign that you haven't compromised, that you still believe there's something ahead, something others call crazy, only because they've never seen it made real. But you've seen it. Not clearly, but enough to never forget it. You've been prepared your whole life for this, not to follow an existing path, but to create a new one. You're not here to replicate an old model. You're here to break the limits, even the ones you once placed on yourself. And if something inside you is starting to move, don't suffocate it with doubt. Let it lead. No one is born with everything. Even I had to learn how to build from scratch. But what I've always held on to, and what I see in you, is the ability not to give up in chaos, the ability to find order in the mess, and the ability to see a better world before anyone else believes it's possible. That's something no school teaches. That's the intuition of future builders. And so I don't need you to be better before starting. I just need you to pause for a second and look at everything you've already gone through. Do you really think it was all random? Or are you starting to see that an invisible hand has been guiding you to this exact moment? I see it clearly, and I believe you're starting to see it too. No further proof needed, just a feeling and a beginning. You're living in an era where the world doesn't need more observers, it needs creators. People who not only ask questions but dare to lay their hands on reality and reshape it into a new form. I'm not talking about revolutionary slogans, protests, or empty chants. I'm talking about a kind of silent, persistent, systematic revolution, where every action you take, every choice you make, contributes to the redefinition of humanity's future, and you are part of it, whether you've realized it or not. True revolutions don't happen on stages. They begin in the minds of silent individuals, those who refuse to accept default living, who aren't satisfied with temporary fixes, who won't submit to what's considered impossible. They're the ones who ask questions when everyone else stays quiet. They're the ones who act while the crowd is still waiting for someone to lead. And if you've made it this far, if you're still going, then you are one of them. I don't use the word revolution lightly. To me, it's a series of intelligent, bold, and purposeful actions. I didn't build SpaceX just to launch rockets. I built it because I couldn't accept that the future of humanity would be limited to one fragile, depleting planet. I didn't found Tesla because I wanted electric cars to look cool. I did it because I couldn't sit still while the transportation industry burned billions of tons of fossil fuel every year. And I didn't call you here just to inspire. I called you because I see you as a factor in that chain of revolution, not needing to be like me, but clearly resonating on the same frequency. Every generation has a small group of people crazy enough to believe they can change the world. And always, they are the ones who do. They don't come from special places. They didn't grow up with every advantage. The only thing they had was a persistent question: could it be different? And they didn't rest until they found the answer themselves. You're holding that question. I see it in the way you receive information, the way you're not easily manipulated by appearances, the way you respond to ideas that challenge outdated thinking. You're someone who redefines values, not copies them. And that makes you dangerous in the way the old world has always feared. I'm not calling for a crowd. I don't need many people. I need the right people. Those who can withstand pressure when going against the tide. Those who don't need applause to keep moving. Those who, even when everything collapses, will stand back up, wipe off the dust and ask, where do we start again? That's the kind of person I want on my team. That's why I need you. The revolution isn't in the headlines, it's in the decisions you make every day. Do you choose to consume or to create? Do you choose doubt or action? Do you say what others want to hear or what needs to be said? And when you face a hard choice, do you choose what's safe or what's right? Each of these questions is a blade cutting through your comfort zone, and that's when you come alive. Because you weren't born just to exist, you were born to leave a mark. If I didn't believe in that ability within you, I wouldn't waste time speaking to you this directly. I don't need more fans. I need collaborators. I need people who dare to imagine a future others call delusional and are willing to work relentlessly to turn it into reality. People like that don't appear in droves. They are rare. And if you're reading this with a strange feeling in your chest, then I believe you're beginning to understand why you're here. I used to think revolution required tearing everything down, but then I realized true revolution begins when you build something more sustainable, more effective, and powerful enough that it doesn't need to shout to prove itself. And that is something you can do, not by yelling, but by quietly building, not by opposing everything, but by committing to do something better. If you've ever felt like you don't belong in the current world, it's likely because you were born to help build a new one. And that's not a burden, that's a responsibility. The responsibility of those who understand they don't need to wait for someone to lead. They are the ones who carve the path. I'm not here to convince you. I'm just here to awaken what you already carry. The revolution has already begun. The question is not whether it will happen. The question is, are you ready to play your role in it? If you're feeling fear, know this. It's not a sign you should stop. On the contrary, it may be the exact signal that you're moving in the right direction. Fear doesn't show up when you're looping around your comfort zone. It only awakens when you begin to touch something meaningful. The paradox no one talks about is this: the most valuable steps always come with a deep sense of unease. I know that because I've lived it throughout my career. Nothing worth remembering ever began from a place of safety. No decision that changed the world came from comfort. When I put all my personal assets into Tesla and SpaceX, when I faced the risk of simultaneous bankruptcy in both companies, when I had to choose between saving one or gambling both to preserve the dream, I was afraid, deeply afraid. But I still chose to move forward, not because I wasn't scared, but because I'd learned one simple yet vital truth. Fear is not a reason to retreat. It's a reminder that you're heading toward a place most people have never dared to go. I want you to understand this at the deepest level possible. The trembling in your body, the quickened heartbeat, the questioning thoughts, the images of failure flashing through your mind, these aren't signs to stop. They're proof that you're standing at the threshold of a new layer of reality. And most people, when they get there, turn back, not because they lack potential, but because they believe fear means not ready. They're wrong. You're wrong if you believe that. Because the truth is, you'll never feel entirely ready for greatness. No one has ever truly been ready to step into a space no one has entered before. But history is made by those who enter anyway. The world is changed by those who act while their logic is still listing reasons to wait. When I speak with truly exceptional people, none of them tell me they felt totally confident from the start. They talk about sleepless nights, moments of doubt, times they wanted to throw it all away and return to the familiar path. But they didn't. They didn't turn back because they knew the moment of greatest panic often comes just before the breakthrough. They learned to live with fear, not letting it control them, but letting it remind them they're on the right track. I don't need you to act recklessly. I need you to act deliberately, but without demanding absolute certainty. Because if you wait for everything to be clear before you move, you'll be forever stuck in preparation. And as you know, no one is remembered for what they were preparing to do. They are remembered for what they actually did, even if it was incomplete, even if they were afraid, even if it was risky. And what separates the ordinary from the revolutionary isn't skill, it's whether they're willing to keep going when every internal signal screams, play it safe. You'll never learn how to navigate a new world by walking old roads. You'll never build something breakthrough by only doing what's certain. If you're scared, I understand. But don't wait for the fear to disappear. It won't. It only shifts. You don't need to eliminate it. You need to move through it. And if you can learn to move with your fear, you will become unstoppable. I've seen people smarter than me, more talented than me, more privileged than me, and they did nothing. They were paralyzed by the illusion that fear meant they didn't belong, when in fact that very fear was the sign that they were standing at the edge of transformation. You don't need a world without fear. You need a will strong enough not to be ruled by it. And if you've read this far, I believe you have that will. Don't seek certainty. Seek the path that makes you feel alive. Don't measure everything by safety. Measure it by meaning. Because in the end, you won't remember the rational decisions that kept you safe. You'll remember the ones that changed you. The moments when you chose to step forward, even while afraid. When you acted without a map. When you trusted a part of yourself that logic couldn't explain. Those moments are the true foundation of a life that matters. I'm not encouraging you to be reckless. I'm urging you to stop postponing. There's a clear difference. Recklessness is action without thought. Postponement is knowing what's right, but not doing it. And you no longer have time for postponement. The world won't wait for you to become brave. It's changing every day. If you don't become a creator, you'll be swept into the current of consumers. Always chasing, always reacting, always behind. And you weren't born to be behind. If you're feeling fear, congratulations. It means you've stepped out of the familiar. But don't turn back, not because you're reckless, but because you've understood that on the other side of fear is the version of you you've always been searching for, and it's not waiting anymore, it's knocking. Answer it. I don't say this to everyone, and I won't say it again. This isn't a scripted call to momentary inspiration, not another form of positive content for you to scroll past nod it for a few seconds, and then leave in your mental recycle bin. I don't have time for surface level conversations, and I'm sure you don't either. Because if you're here, if you're still reading this far, then you're probably as exhausted as I am with hollow messages, generic slogans, big sounding words that never touch any real nerve inside you. I understand. Because I'm like you. I'm not drawn to what sounds big. I only care about what produces real results. I don't send these invitations out in mass. And I'm not pretending when I say I'm looking for something specific, because I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I believe you're part of it. Not because you're perfect, not because you're exceptional, but because you're one of the rare few still transmitting the frequency of truth. I call it oriented signal. It's not loud, but if you're sharp enough, focused enough, you'll pick it up. And you have. That's why you're still here. I don't need more admirers. I'm not sending out calls to gather attention. I don't build things for applause. Everything I've done, from Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Starlink, started from one common point. There was a massive problem, and I couldn't pretend I didn't see it. Once you begin to see the world as it truly is, you can't go back to a passive state. And I know you're starting to see too. That's why I'm speaking to you, not anyone else. Maybe you used to think those who were chosen had special backgrounds, connections, or privileges. I believed that once, when I was young, but I realized the people who change history are often the outsiders. They weren't invited into the room, they built the room. They didn't wait for permission, they acted as if they were born with it. And most of them, when they started, had no one who believed in them, no one invested in them, no one understood them. But they kept going, because they didn't need to be understood to know what they were doing was right. And I see that same energy in you. I don't need you to prove anything. If you're here, that's proof enough. If you're still reading, it tells me you haven't given up. If something inside you is still pushing, even if you can't name it, then you're more ready than you think. And no, this isn't motivational speech, this is truth. A truth you have to be fully awake to recognize. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm not building a community. I'm not calling you to join a group, a program, a platform. I have nothing to sell. What I'm building is the future. And I need people to help build it. People who don't need the spotlight, but are willing to stay behind to finish what others left undone. People who don't need praise, but can't sit still when things are falling apart. People who don't talk much about change, but are the living embodiment of it. Do you see yourself in that? I used to think I needed the best, but no, I need the most resilient. The kind of person who, after being rejected 99 times, acts on the 100th like anything is possible. The kind of person who, when everything around them is losing direction, still holds their internal compass. That's not talent. That's inner strength, forged through failure, silence, and years of being overlooked. And if you are that kind of person, I need you. I know the world won't clap for you when you start. No one puts you on the front page just because you have vision, but don't expect that. They'll come later. Recognition will come later, and you don't need it to begin. All you need is one reason so strong nothing can disprove it, a reason not to impress others, but to know that if you don't do it, no one else will. If you don't step up, everything stays the same, and you can't accept that. I don't send out these messages often. I don't have time for words that don't lead to action. And I don't keep these doors open forever. The world moves too fast. Opportunities don't wait. And the future, as I've said before, is impatient. It doesn't come to dreamers, it comes to doers. If you're that person, you'll know. You don't need my confirmation, you only need your own consent. And once you give that, everything changes. I don't need you to do something massive today, but I need you to start, not with a loud declaration, but with a real action, a decisive commitment, a quiet promise no one else sees, but you know, and I know, because that's the true beginning. And everything great begins that way. The future is not something you wait for. It's something that's coming at you with uncontrollable speed, not giving you time to hesitate, not repeating its invitation if you don't respond. The future doesn't knock with clear signs. It doesn't arrive in a perfect, obvious, easy-to-choose form. It comes as a risky decision, an uncertain opportunity, a restless feeling you can't ignore. And if you're feeling that right now, then understand that you are being called. I'm not talking about destiny as a vague concept. I'm talking about a reality being shaped minute by minute by your choices, your actions. Every second you're reading this, a web of possibilities is stretching like a flexible network of energy waiting for your direction. You're not bound by your past. You're not confined by what has already happened. You are only limited by how willing you are to answer when the future calls. When I started SpaceX, no one thought it could succeed. When I introduced the idea of a high-performance electric car, the market laughed at me. When I spoke of building a global satellite internet network, people thought I was playing sci-fi games. But I didn't do it because I was sure it would work. I did it because I couldn't not do it. Because the future kept calling me with visions of a better world that no one had dared to believe was possible. And I knew that if I didn't step in, no one else would do it the way it needed to be done. You have the chance to do the same, not necessarily on a planetary scale, but certainly on the scale of your personal destiny. Your future doesn't have to be spectacular by someone else's standard. It only has to be true to you. Big enough that you can't ignore it. Real enough that you can't keep living in delay. Different enough that you realize if you don't choose it, no other version will suffice. That's not pressure, that's privilege. I don't shape the future using pre-made formulas, and you don't have to either. All you need is a reason strong enough to stand up. Not because you have the resources, but because you have what few others do. A vision uncorrupted by collective fear. You still believe things can be different. You still see a better version of yourself. And that's exactly where every personal revolution begins. I've stood in rooms where everyone laughed when I presented my vision. I've received the skeptical stares of investors unwilling to take risks on what they didn't understand. But you know what? The future isn't built by the approval of the crowd. It's built by those who act before others understand. And I believe you are one of them. You don't need to do something extraordinary to step into your future. You just need to start with what's right. The thing you've known for a long time but keep putting off. Maybe it's a project you've thought about for years but haven't started. Maybe it's the decision to leave a draining environment that gives you nothing in return. Maybe it's simply sitting down and rewriting your life's blueprint the way you truly want to live. Whatever it is, you already know what it is. And if you're honest, you know you can't delay it any longer. I'm not speaking to you as someone who's achieved something great. I'm speaking to you as someone who's gone through the same doubts you're feeling. I've been there. I've had sleepless nights wondering if I was heading toward total collapse or toward something no one had ever done. And in that moment, I learned the most important thing. You don't need certainty, you need commitment. When you've committed, you don't turn back, even if the path is unclear. And step by step, you will create that path yourself. The future isn't handed out, it's seized. Not through frantic resistance, but through steady action. Not with slogans, but by daring to begin, to persist, to continue in silence when no one cheers, when no one understands. That's how the future is rewritten, through every small action of those who dare to believe they don't need miracles, because they themselves are the answer to the miracles they once prayed for. And if you think everything must be clear before you act, you've underestimated the power of timely presence. You weren't called to this moment to have all the answers. You were called to start asking the right questions, and to live as though the answers are already on their way. No one will draw a complete map for you, but your intuition has already sketched the first lines, and now all you need is the courage to continue drawing them with your actions. The future is calling your name, not in a shout, but in the small vibrations inside you, where you know clearly you no longer belong in your old life. That is a call no one else hears but you, and you don't need anyone to confirm it's real, because if you hear it, if you feel it clearly enough not to ignore it, then that is the proof. No one is coming to save you. But if you stand up, not waiting for opportunity, but to create it, then the world itself will begin to shift in ways you never thought possible. There are moments you can't repeat, intersections of time, choice, and self-awareness. They don't make noise, no fireworks. No one stands there to announce, this is when everything changes. But when you're awake enough, you know. And you're in that moment right now. This is a turning point, not because someone on the outside created it, but because you finally looked within and realized, You can't keep living the way you used to. Real change doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from the moment you decide that the old standard is no longer enough, that the old level of living, the old way of thinking, the way you've treated yourself no longer fits. That you can't keep trading your true potential for momentary comfort. And when that happens, everything starts to shift, quietly but irreversibly. I used to think the turning point in life came from a big opportunity, $1 million offer, a breakthrough idea, a revolutionary deal. But then I realized all of that is just the result. The real turning point always begins with a silent decision, a choice you make when no one sees, no one knows, no one rewards you. It's when you say to yourself, I'm not going back anymore. Even though what's ahead isn't clear, I no longer belong where I was. And if you're feeling that right now, don't underestimate it. You're standing on the edge between the person you were and the person you're about to become. You don't need the world's support to turn a new page. You only need a real commitment to yourself. Don't wait for someone to hand you the ideal conditions. There are no ideal conditions. Conditions are created from within you. Every business I ever started was born in doubt, rejection, and lack of resources. But I didn't start with perfection. I started with a refusal to back down. And I see that same fire in you, a clear sense that you're ready for a completely new chapter. You don't need to explain that to anyone. You just need to act as if it's inevitable. Don't think a turning point comes as an emotional explosion. It usually arrives in unsettling silence. One night you lie down and feel your heart no longer accepts the way you've been living. One morning you wake up and know you can't delay any longer. Not because you just watched an inspiring video, but because you're simply too tired of living below your real standard. That's the point where you can't go back. And you don't need to. Because what lies ahead, though uncertain, is real. I've seen people with more potential than I ever had, and yet they never crossed this moment. They knew they needed to change. They felt the calling, but then they returned. Because they didn't recognize that turning points never introduce themselves. You have to be brave enough to identify them and disciplined enough to act without outside validation. And that's why I'm speaking to you, because I believe you have both. You don't need to feel certain. You just need to feel that this is the time. Everything you've learned, experienced, failed at, it wasn't meaningless. It was preparation for this moment, for this decision. Do you think you accidentally stumbled upon these words at the exact right time? No. You brought yourself here through hundreds, maybe thousands of small choices. And now you're facing a big one. Not about what to do next, but about who to become next. I'm not here to paint a rosy picture. I won't tell you what's next will be easy. It won't. It will shake you. It will make you question yourself. But I know one thing for sure. If you take the step, you won't be the same. Every action, every day, you don't turn back, will be a brick in building the version of yourself no one can ever take away. A version not built by words, but through real transformation. And that's what the world is lacking. Real people living to be accepted, but living to make a difference. I want you to look at your life, not with regret, but with the eyes of someone about to begin a new chapter. Everything you need is already within you. The only thing missing is a non-negotiable decision. And when you make that decision, the universe begins to shift. Not because it's helping you, but because you've become the kind of person who no longer needs help to begin. You self-initiate, you self-direct, and nothing can stop you anymore. This is the turning point, and you know it. Don't let it pass like another moment you almost started. Don't let it become one of the stories you tell later with regret in your voice. Let it be the day you finally started living in alignment with the reason you're still here. The future doesn't need another analyst. It needs someone who dares to begin. And if that someone is you, then everything from this point on changes. Not because of luck, but because you chose not to turn back. Every operating system is built on a hidden assumption that a large percentage of people will follow, will not question, will not disrupt the order. And because the majority behaves this way, every structure, from education, media to policy and technology, is built upon the predictability of collective behavior. But every real advancement in human history has come from a single type of person. Someone who refused to believe that this is just how things have to work. Someone who asks questions. Someone who isn't satisfied with a well-trodden path. Someone who dares to see the world as a system that can be upgraded and acts to do so. You might be one of the very few people like that. And if you realize it in time, you'll change not only your life, but the trajectory of others around you. I'm not saying you'll change everything in a day, a week, or even a year. Real change doesn't follow a beautiful growth chart. It happens slowly, quietly, without recognition at first. But if you're persistent enough to get through that stage, if you're conscious enough not to chase early approval, then you, with a new mindset, a new standard, a new method, will become the catalyst that forces the world to respond. That's how you change everything, not with a promise, but with a standard of living that others can't ignore. I've been told thousands of times that the things I wanted to do were unrealistic, that you can't mass-produce electric cars, build reusable rocket technology, and simultaneously reshape the global energy industry. But I didn't listen, not because I thought they were stupid, but because I understood that their limitations weren't mine. And if I let them reprogram my beliefs, I would be limited by collective fear instead of being led by personal vision. You're facing the same choice now, and if you don't protect your vision like it's your most valuable asset, the world will redefine you in whatever way is most convenient to it. People who change everything don't wait until they're ready. They act to become ready. They don't wait for consensus. They act to create consensus. They don't enter systems to adapt. They enter to assess which systems are still useful and which ones need to be replaced. That is an entirely different way of living. It's not safe, but it's meaningful. And if any part of you is fed up with the repetition of normal, then you know which side you belong on. You can change everything, but that only happens if you stop retreating from your true role. You don't need miracles, you need discipline. You don't need applause from the crowd. You need a direction you can walk toward with confidence, even if you're alone. And you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent. In thought, in action, in your belief that every limit is temporary, if you're patient enough to dismantle it layer by layer. People talk about changing the world like it's a slogan. I don't use that phrase as a slogan. I treat it like a job no one assigns, but the right person will accept. I didn't wait for someone to give me this role. I wrote it for myself. And if you feel called, don't wait until you have enough proof. There's never enough. You are the proof. What you feel, what you observe, what you can no longer ignore, that's the data most of the world has learned to dismiss. But you haven't, and that's what makes you different. Don't let anyone fool you into thinking one person can't make massive change. History is full of evidence to the contrary. One person with a clear vision, decisive action, and firm ethics is always the greatest threat to any outdated system. And if you are that person, you carry not just personal responsibility, but moral responsibility for the future. That responsibility isn't a burden, it's an honor, and you have to be strong enough to carry it. When you dare to live by your own standards, you awaken others who are living in compromise. When you take the first step, you become the map for those still searching for a path. And when you succeed, you don't succeed just for yourself. You prove that the impossible can become real if there's enough will and enough strategy. That's when you stop merely living in the world, you begin to reshape it. And the last thing I want you to understand is this. The change you bring doesn't start with something big. It starts with how you live today, with no longer compromising with what's meaningless, with choosing to act when others stay silent, with daring to say enough to mediocrity and saying, I will, to what no one's ever tried. No one is waiting for you, but I am. I know you can. And I know that if you truly begin, nothing will ever be the same again. You don't need another plan. You don't need another self-help book, another course, another seminar, or yet another motivational speaker. What you need right now is action. Not blind action, but a decision clear enough to end the cycle of delay. A real move, imperfect, incomplete, but real. Action, no matter how small, is the only thing that separates someone with vision from someone who forever lives in their unused potential. I used to think that to achieve something big, I needed everything in place, funding, a team, a model, market share, but I learned an expensive lesson from the times I almost failed completely. You don't need to have everything to start. You need to start in order to find out what's truly essential. Clarity doesn't come before action, it arrives during action. And every significant victory in my life began from a simple action. I got to work, even when I wasn't sure I was ready. You live in a world full of information, but lacking in people who take action. Everyone knows what to do. They have the theory, they have the knowledge, they even know what's holding them back, but they still wait for some signal from the outside to grant them permission to move. The problem is, that signal will never come, and if it does, it'll be too late. If you're still asking, how will I know when it's time to begin? The very existence of that question is already the answer. You no longer need more evidence. You need to end the analysis phase and enter the creation phase. I've never seen anyone change the game by sitting around calculating risks to the point of paralysis. The people who create breakthroughs are the ones who learn through experimentation. They learn by doing, by getting it wrong, adjusting, and doing it again. They don't avoid collision with reality. And it's in those collisions that assumptions get tested, strategies are refined, and visions become executable models. If you're still waiting to feel completely confident, here's the harsh truth. You'll be waiting forever. Because confidence only comes after you've done repeatedly what you used to fear. Action doesn't demand perfection, it demands commitment. Commitment to not give up when things get messy. Commitment to not turn back when results don't show up instantly. Commitment to not let other people's doubts defeat the clarity of your intuition. When I started Tesla, every indicator was against me. When I launched SpaceX, the entire aerospace industry laughed at it. But I didn't stop to convince them. I acted. And then the results spoke for themselves. You don't need others to believe in you. You need to believe in the inevitability of your own momentum when you act consistently without needing reminders. Everything else, recognition, opportunities, connections, will appear along the way. But only after you've proven you're serious about yourself, not with words, but with repeated daily behavior. I've seen hundreds of smart, talented, resourceful people stuck at the first step. They spend their whole lives planning without ever entering the arena. They fear risk, fear failure, fear being seen as dreamers. But what they don't realize is this: delay is the greatest risk. Nothing steals your life faster than constantly postponing what you already know you must do. That's not caution, that's self-destruction, wrapped in a layer of rationality. Action is the only thing that sets you apart. You don't need to be the best, but you do need to be the one who acts more persistently, and longer than anyone else in your field. What you lack in experience, you'll make up for in adaptability. What you lack in resources, you'll make up for in your ability to learn from failure. And what you lack in relationships, you'll make up for with such unwavering consistency that no one can ignore you. You think you need someone to lead you? No. You need to create your own path. And you don't create a path with ideas, you create it with steps. Each step you take, hesitant or clumsy, leaves a mark. And when you look back a year from now, you'll see not only how far you've come, you'll see that you've carved out a road others can follow. That is the real value of action. It doesn't just change you, it changes the context around you. I'm not saying action is easy. It requires you to face yourself. No more excuses, no more blame, no more delay. But that also means you'll see who you really are, not obscured by expectation, not defined by comparison. Just you and your ability to live in alignment with the creative force inside you. All you need is action. Not tomorrow, not when you feel more ready, but right now. Action doesn't require you to have everything. It only asks that you bring the one thing you already truly possess: choice. You can choose to delay and live a life you know is not right, or you can choose to act and step into the journey you were born to take. That choice, no one can make it for you, but if you do choose to move, I believe you'll never look back, because you'll realize everything you've been waiting for has always lived inside a single decision you could have made at any moment. And the best moment is now. I don't know who you are, I don't know where you are, what you've been through, or how many crossroads you're standing at in life. But if you're still reading this, not giving up, not scrolling past, not treating this like just another piece of writing, then I know one thing for sure. You are different, and the only thing separating you from the future you deserve is not ability, not circumstance, not permission from anyone. It's just one simple thing: whether or not you act. Everything else is noise. I don't need to inspire you. I believe you already have everything within you to begin. What I want is to help you see it more clearly, not because I'm Elon Musk, but because I know what happens when a person dares to trust their intuition, dares to turn their back on the voice of doubt, even when that voice comes from within. I've lived through opposition. I've worked through doubt. I've built things the entire old industry once called crazy. And I know this: if you want to go far, you need to learn to listen to the only thing that will never betray you, your own vision. I, Elon Musk, am waiting for you. Not because I need you, but because the world needs you. It needs people who don't wait for permission to create change. It needs minds that won't bow to outdated structures. It needs hearts still pure enough to feel disturbed by the stagnation and meaninglessness unfolding every day. It needs hands ready to turn ideas into reality, not for glory, but to contribute to something far greater than personal gain. If you are that kind of person, I'm waiting. You don't need to be like me. In fact, you shouldn't be like me. You need to become the most authentic and resilient version of yourself. But if there's one thing I'd advise you, after everything I've seen, it's this: don't live like you have your whole life to begin. You don't. Time is finite, and the world doesn't need more people who talk well, analyze well, or delay with sophistication. It needs people bold enough to declare, I will take responsibility for what I can change. What can you change? A process, a company, a family, a community, or even just yourself. That is more than enough. My honest advice: don't wait for confidence before you act. Action creates confidence, not the other way around. Don't wait for the big idea. Start with a small problem you can no longer ignore. Don't try to be heard. Create something others can't ignore. Don't seek perfection. Pursue consistency. And most importantly, don't ask anyone if they believe in you. Be the kind of person who no longer needs that question. I'm not here to pat you on the back. I'm here to strike your spine. Because if you've made it this far, you're not here for temporary motivation. You're here to confirm what you've always known deep down, that you were born to do something with weight, with depth, with real impact. And if you don't act on it, you'll live a full life that never truly touches the reason you were placed here. I don't want that for you. This is the moment. There is no better time, no later, when I'm more free, when I'm better, when I'm more certain. There will be no right time unless you begin creating it. You don't need a map, you need to start moving. The map will form as you act. You don't need motivation every day. You need a system that makes you act even without inspiration. And you don't need everyone to understand you. You just need to understand yourself. I'm Musk, and waiting for you, not in some special room, not under spotlight and prestige. I'm waiting for you where real action happens, where you make decisions no one sees, where you quietly shift direction without seeking approval, where you rewrite the future with lines of code, ideas, plans, efforts that no one mentions on the front page. That's where real history is made. And that's where I'll find you. Because in the end, there are only two kinds of people: the ones who say, I wish I had, and the ones who say, I made it happen. Which one are you? If you've come this far, I think you already know the answer. And I'm here, not to cheer you on, but to confirm that you don't need cheering anymore. You're ready. And the world will never be the same once you act.